I'm not sure how many of you work at a large corporation. Let me just flip these slides here, which are not working. Oh, there we go. Now we're back. All right. So I don't know how many work in a large corporation, but it's kind of hard to recruit nowadays because, if I talk to my kids, they might say, hey, you want to innovate, right? How about going to work for a bank? And they'll kind of look at me, right? And they'll say, yeah, Dad, I don't think so, okay? I think I'd rather work for Google and Amazon, et cetera. So we've got a reputation that we need to change. And what this talk's going to be about today is really how do you drive innovation in a corporate construct, and therefore, how do you recruit talent and how do you change things? So I got 6 things I want to cover today. So if you can remember anything, remember that we got 6 things that will help change the world. Number 1, you need to define a simple business outcome. So I was talking to one of my competitors, and it was a person on the tech side, and what that person said is, I don't understand. We have 100 people in Silicon Valley. We've built all this cool stuff, but the business won't use it. And so I'm looking, I'm like, you don't understand that? Did you actually talk to the business? Did you talk to the clients? Or did you just build cool stuff in a vacuum? And the reality is, they just build cool stuff in a vacuum. So it doesn't work. So one of the things we did at Northern is a few years ago, we actually decided we wanted to be the first within our competitor landscape to have an application based on blockchain that went live. So all we did was say to a team, here, you got 6 people, I'll give you a couple $1 million, build something. They came back with some ideas. Ultimately, they came back and said, we want to automate the private equity asset class. So when a general partner and limited partner want to settle a trade, they want to automate that on blockchain. Said, great. It was June, you got till December, build something. The simplicity of that and the autonomy the team had meant that they could go off and build. We didn't talk about feature and function. I didn't design anything. It was just get something live. And to be fair, they were a month late, but they got something live and got it done. So the business outcome needs to be simple. Step 2, replicate the garage. So co-location. Co-location is really important. But one thing I've learned, personalities matter. So you're in a corporate construct. You can't just put 2 people together and think that they're going to get along. You do have to make sure that the individuals do get along, that there is mutual respect for each other. So we have one group right now called Front Office Solutions that we're building a new platform for. And what they actually do is the head of IT and the head of the business sit right across from each other. They've built their teams, and they talk all day long. So we've given them collaboration tools. So that garage, you don't live in a garage though, you live in corporate America, so you need a tool like Slack, you need something like that. And I did, forgive me, borrow a list. The most important thing is make sure the team has a set of priorities. So this is their priorities, how to make every decision. Customer value, time to market, quality, competitive advantage. We value the simplest solution above others, bias for action. We choose solutions where we can share knowledge across the organization, automation of processes, consistency, and cost. Every decision they make as a team is based on those 10 criteria. And that's really powerful because then it's based on logic and on emotion, and they really do a good job, ultimately, of replicating the garage. Now, being the person in charge, I have to say, it's helpful to have an executive, so when you need to make a capital call, all right, you have their phone number and you can get more money. They didn't write that, I did. All right. Number 3, related to that, is selling the concept. And this is probably the hardest thing to do in corporate America. When you think about selling the concept, most people come in with a business case. I get probably 100 business cases a year. Every one is awesome. Why wouldn't you do it? Look at the return. It's only going to cost $5 million, and in year 2 and 3, you'll get all your payback, no problem. So they all say this again and again and again. But no one ever puts themselves in the CEO's shoes to say what is affordable. And so you need to come up with some metric to be able to put yourself in their shoes and say, all right, does this make sense? For example, one of the things we did was say, at Northern Trust, in my business, we have something called trust fees. So when a person pays us for holding their assets, et cetera, that fee we call a trust fee. And so what is our total IT expense as compared to those trust fees? Let's just hypothetically say it's 15%. Well, if I can live within 15% and stay there, can we then spend some money on the innovation and on the business case? The answer would be yes, as long as you're living in that constraint. So you've got to figure out a way to make sure that you help everybody live in that. The worst piece to do this with is replacing legacy infrastructure. So if you've got to go out there and you've got to figure out how do you spend a lot of money replacing all of these legacy platforms, right? Some of you may have mainframes in your shop. I know we do, right? So what's the business case besides it's the right thing to do? I could scare them. I could say, you know, some of this is written on COBOL, and there's only maybe 6 COBOL programmers left in Chicago. So you might want to do that. But they'd still say, okay, but what's the ROI? Well, it's staying in business. So what you try to do is figure out how can you combine replacing something that needs to because it's end of life and you want to redo this with something that actually generates revenue or improves the client experience. So what we've done in this case is we're moving to an event-based architecture, but we chose our most manual process where we can get a ton of productivity by automating that, and we've built the event-based architecture for that process first. So does the business case tie out? No. But is it better than nothing and just saying we're just going to do this and get the exact same feature function? No, it's much better. So from that perspective, we do well. All right, next thing. Be a coach, not a player. So one of the things I like to say is, you know, you could be a soccer coach or a football coach. So if you think about football. In football, right, every play is laid out. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. And if somebody makes a wrong move, it's called a broken play. All right, and maybe they have to innovate a little bit. Well, what does a soccer coach do? A soccer coach puts 11 people out on the field and says, you know what, we're going to be defensive, or we're going to play more offensive, we're going to play up from the back. They set a philosophy, right? They train the team. Then the team plays. There's nothing you can do in the middle of the game. You can't make a change during the game. The team is out there doing it. Now, you can ultimately switch a player in or out a couple times. But to me, if you're going to have a culture of innovation, you have to be a soccer coach. You have to set the philosophy. Now, when I was 24, I sat down and somebody wasn't doing their job. I actually pushed them aside and said, hey, I'm going to do it. Arguably, not a good way to manage. All right? But a good way I've learned, just as an example, is now if somebody sends, I don't know how many of you get emails, and there's like 50 people on the email. Sometimes I just want to respond. But I got to realize, no. My job is actually to send an email to the person in charge. Don't copy everybody. Actually just respond to that one person. Give them my opinion. Give them my advice. Because if you respond to everybody, you sort of cut them off at the knees. And you became the player, not the coach. Next one is be a change champion. Sorry, I have notes. I'm getting old. I can't remember all this. So bottom line, corporations have antibodies. All right? And those antibodies will do anything sometimes to prevent change. And it's not really a negative thing. For a lot of parts of the organization, they're there because they want to protect what you have. So they want to make sure bad things don't happen. That turns out to be an antibody. But your question is the antibody something that's curing the illness? All right? Or is it organ rejection? What is the antibody causing? And you've really got to help figure that out. So in one case, it can be very helpful, and that is where IT risk comes in and says, you know, we need to be careful here. Why don't we do some pen tests? Here's some security scripts you got to run on your cloud application. Fantastic, all right? Another case, maybe not so good, and I'll use a different example. And we are an outsourcing business, and when we take on activities from our clients, sometimes the person we face off with is the project manager. And that project manager doesn't really understand all the activities that are done on the other side. Their job is actually to replicate what happens today. So you cannot ever get any innovation in what you're doing if there are people in the middle. So you have to remove the layer of abstraction between the people that are building the product and the end clients. If you're in a corporate setting and you have all these people whose job is to sit in the middle and say what happens and what's wrong, can't work. So that has to be done. The last piece is kind of obvious, but one that's worth saying, is that to truly build a culture, you've got to shine by the reflected light, all right? And that may mean actually never taking credit. So we have our head of sales who does everything from making sure his name is never, ever in a win announcement. The head of sales is actually, sends wine baskets to individuals that help sell and get the job done. Again, anything to make sure that other people are congratulated, but not him. Ultimately, he's a head of sales for a reason. And the last piece is, you know what, you got to take the heat if it doesn't work. That's your job. The buck has to stop with you. So finally, you know, sometimes a fresh perspective is all it takes. And I'm hoping you can look back at corporate America now and say, yep, you know what, innovation can occur here. You just need to have a plan. Thank you.